It's April 11th, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have a brutal crime that still haunts investigators, prisoners who rose up before freedom arrived, and a bombing aimed for someone who was never aboard. Let's begin. On April 11th, 1981, a quiet cabin in the forests of Northern California became the center of a chilling, unsolved crime. At the Keddie resort, inside Cabin 28, Sue Sharp and her children settled in for what should have been a normal night. Nothing seemed out of place, no sign that by morning, everything would be wrong. By sunrise, Sue, her son John, and his friend Dana were found in the living room, bound, beaten, and murdered in a scene so violent it barely made sense. What was even more disturbing was what didn't happen. In the next room, her 3 younger children had been asleep the entire time. And then there was Tina, Sue's 12-year-old daughter, gone without a trace, with no signs of a struggle. For 3 years, the mystery deepened, and then on April 11th, 1984, exactly 3 years to the day, her remains were discovered, miles away in the wilderness. Investigators later uncovered disturbing clues: a neighbor's cryptic letter, a weapon found submerged near the cabin, and DNA pointing to someone who was never charged. Even now, decades later, the Keddie cabin murder remains unsolved, and the question still lingers in the silence of the forest: who walked into Cabin 28 that night? On April 11th, 1945, behind barbed wire and watchtowers, something unimaginable was about to happen. Inside Buchenwald concentration camp, tens of thousands of prisoners waited in silence as the war closed in. For days, the SS had been emptying the camp, marching thousands away into the cold, but not everyone left. Hidden among them was the starving and the dying, and a resistance had quietly been growing. They had infiltrated positions, stolen weapons, and passed messages in whispers. As the sound of the distant artillery grew louder, they knew their time was running out, because the Nazis had a final plan: destroy and erase everything and everyone. That morning, around 10 a.m., something changed. The guards began to flee. Panic spread through the SS ranks as American tanks were spotted miles away. In that moment of chaos, the prisoners moved. Armed with smuggled rifles and grenades, they stormed the watchtowers. They cut the wires and disarmed the remaining guards. Men who had been reduced to numbers took back control, and by afternoon, a white flag was raised above the camp, not by the soldiers, but by the prisoners. When the U.S. forces finally arrived hours later, they didn't find a camp waiting to be liberated. They found survivors who had already done it themselves. The liberation of Buchenwald was not just a rescue, it was a rebellion. On April 11, 1955, a plane lifted quietly into the early morning sky, carrying journalists and delegates towards a historical conference. Everything seemed routine, until hours later, something exploded. Mid-flight, over the waters near the Natuna Islands, Indian Air Flight 300, known as the Kashmir Princess, was torn open by a hidden bomb. Smoke poured into the cabin and fire spread along the wing. The crew scrambled, shutting down the engines and setting out desperate distress calls. Moments later, the aircraft struck the ocean, shattering into pieces. Out of everybody aboard, 3 survived, and 16 others vanished beneath the water. The most unsettling part of the story wasn't the explosion, it was the reason. Investigators would later uncover a chilling truth. The bomb had been planted as part of an assassination attempt targeting Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. He was supposed to be aboard that flight. An emergency surgery delayed him, or some believed he knew that something was coming and quietly changed his plans. Either way, the plane took off. A different group of passengers boarded in his place, unaware they were stepping into someone else's fate. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.